Guys, I'm Mandy from the Empowered Women Project. Today we are joined by Katy Johnston, and I'm going to be asking her a few questions about endometriosis. I think it's an important condition that we don't know enough about, and Katy recently started Endo Silence Scotland as a community in order to raise a bit of awareness around the condition. So I've got a few questions for you, Katy.
Yes, I'm ready.
You're ready?
No, I'm not.
And hopefully we can dispel some myths, get some chat on the go, and kind of put everyone at ease a bit about if they should have the diagnosis. All right. So on my way here today, I decided I would Google as somebody who potentially was diagnosed with endometriosis. So it affects 1.5 million women, is that correct?
That is true. That is one of the correct stats out there. I think that when you Google something like this, you're going to see all sorts of things that are just, untrue, exaggerations, all those things that would really scare young girls Googling. Yes. But that one, yes, unfortunately, it is true. There are a lot of people affected by this condition.
And 1 in 10.
1 in 10.
What is that stat?
1 in 10 women in the UK have endometriosis. And yeah, it's a condition that I bet you before this you possibly had never even heard of it, even though it's the second most common gynecological condition, again, in the UK. So, I mean, in Scotland as well, it would be the same, and that's mind-blowing, that number. If you think about a classroom full of girls, that's, a high percentage, a bathroom on a night out full of people, just like, that's 1 in 10 of those people.
And are those people diagnosed people, or people that are just living with it and maybe haven't got the diagnosis yet?
Well, this is the hard thing, because you have to kind of acknowledge that it's happening to you before that you would go to the doctor and go through the proper channels, but on average it takes 7.5 years, I think, to get a diagnosis, because I think largely because of the taboo element, the fact that realistically you're talking periods and people don't want to talk about it and they don't acknowledge it and they suffer in silence for far too long, and we've created a real sort of epidemic because we've not acknowledged it.
So tell us a bit about you, Katy, and how you discovered your diagnosis.
Okay, right. I'm going to try and condense this a little because I could be here for hours
talking
about this. Basically, I have always had quite heavy periods. They've always been debilitating. We're talking, 3 or 4 days off from school or uni, a month, to go through these agonising symptoms where I'm bedridden with cramps, nauseous, vomiting, fainting, winding up in A&E, demanding morphine in the middle of the night because I can't get through it and I feel like, I'm dying, basically. And I know that sounds really dramatic, and I think this is half the problem, is that people tell themselves, no, you're being a hypochondriac, get on with it. Doctors will tell you that as well. And it's just so unhelpful, and people suffer for far too long because of that. So from about 16, mine got really, really bad, and this was just this sort of monthly procedure. We'd go through it every month. I would wind up, begging for pain relief, and kind of going to the doctor and being told, we'll pop you on the pill, or have you tried this, a slightly stronger ibuprofen, that'll do it for you. And people who would usually give you sympathy just kind of don't, which is quite funny as well, because I think we're all girls going through the same thing and we should all just be able to get on with it, and that's all fine and well, but it's not the case for everyone. Sometimes it should flag up something and you should think, oh, hang on, this might be something bigger than just a simple, they're never simple, period.
Absolutely. And is everyone's experience of endometriosis different, and how would you describe your endo?
Oh, 100%. I mean, the thing is, this is why it boggles people for so long. There's still no cure, no matter how there's so many experts on endo, but they still don't have answers to even some of the most basic of questions. So I went through this kind of rigmarole every month for years, and it got to the stage where I gained a lot of weight. That was unexplained, no idea, and then rapidly lost 2.5 stone in about 2 months. Through a diet of literally just vomiting 6 or 7 times a day in agonising pain, not acknowledging these cramps that eventually lingered so long that I was bedridden for a good 2.5 months as well, and had to stop my university course, and had to go in for this kind of life-changing diagnostic surgery, because although they could see on a scan that mine was pretty bad, with endo you oftentimes don't know you have anything until they go in for an operation, which is mind-blowing. And obviously they found out it was stage 4. It was the worst, which is the worst kind. There are 4 stages. Adhesions all over the shop. My fallopian tube had expanded to the same size as my womb. And my bowel and my uterus are fused together. Which they still actually are, because they couldn't really do much in that operation because they were quite overwhelmed by what they saw. And
what they discovered.
Yeah, exactly, and couldn't get past it. But my point being, my condition, all those things that I've said to you, are so specific to me, and my ovulation patterns, my kind of body, everyone's so different inherently. So of course there are fluctuations and changes from each person to the next. But when you're dealing with a topic that is so, hushed, so silenced in conversation, so like, don't talk about that, that's gross, then there's even more ambiguity, because although people are doing research, of course, there are, in Edinburgh, just down the road alone, there's so much research being done, and it's wonderful to see, but, nobody knows what's going on here. And it's just kind of, until we acknowledge there's something wrong, the research isn't getting done, people are suffering needlessly, and it's such a complicated thing that we need to be doing as much as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And at what point did you think, I want to just raise awareness?
Well, actually, it's quite bizarre, of course, because nothing happens to me like in a regular fashion.
Don't worry, I'm the same.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of was going through all this, waiting months at a time for this scan, this gynecological appointment, this, that, feeling dead, frustrated, probably is the right word, because I was having to stop my course, I was in pain all the time, and I was like, this is ridiculous. I'd just done a few weeks work experience, because I'm doing journalism, in a paper, and I'd just passed out, ended up in hospital, was kind of out for the count, and I messaged the editor from the paper and said, look, this is ridiculous. High on painkillers, I may add. This is not my usual sort of like forthright way, but this is what I was going to do. I messaged her and said, people need to talk about this. It's absolutely absurd that I didn't even know what this was until they told me, and I have had all the symptoms for literally years and years, all the symptoms. If I'd read a fact sheet, I'd have known I had it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because my body was telling me, but I just didn't know it was a thing. So I said to her, it was actually Endo Awareness Month, just randomly coincided with that, so on trend, I can't help it. So I messaged this woman and I said, she's amazing by the way, and she said straight away, this is exactly what we want to do, we want to talk about this, we'll get it in the paper. And from that, it spiraled, people started responding to me, finding me anyway, and I realised that there was a real gap in communication between sufferers. I don't think that there was, although there's wonderful support groups and there are networks out there, personally I wanted to be responsible for starting that conversation in a way.
Platform,
I wanted to kind of, give my sort of bit to the cause and try and open up a space for people to, anything and everything from sharing funny pictures of like, and being like, oh, so relatable, all this stuff, to actual, positive help, and actually for me selfishly to ask for advice from people who have gone through it and been through it for far longer than I have and have all the tricks of the trade that I wouldn't know. Even yesterday I reached out to people on my page because I had a big flare up and I was worried, and they solutions instantly, and that's the whole point, that communication.
Amazing. And are you still managing to take some time for your own self-care, because it's been pretty hectic?
No, it's okay. I realised the other week actually when I met up with you for a coffee, I sort of said, I have been putting off going to the doctor to get my prescription, which is ridiculous because
it's not like we're ignoring the condition.
No, exactly. I'm talking about it all the time. I'm doing the awareness bit, but when it was actually, oh, you need to go to the hospital, you need to go and sit down and get your medicine, and I was like, oh, I don't really have time for that, because I've got to do all this stuff. So I think it's important to,
take a step back.
And I was saying to you just before that if you don't take the step back yourself, your body won't force you to do it. It will find a way. It'll find a way to remind you.
It manifests itself somehow.
Yes, absolutely. And it won't remind you in a nice little nudge. By the way, go to the doctor. It'll remind you in a full blown flare out. You'll be housebound for the day, and you'll go, right, okay, I should have just maybe taken it a bit easier.
Yes.
So there's there's no point in pretending it's not there.
No, and I can absolutely relate to that, because as I was saying to you earlier, me myself and my own recovery with mental health, if I have a bad day now, it just knocks me for 6. And I think you don't expect the bad days, and they really hinder you, kind of thing. So how has your story been received?
It's been overwhelmingly positive,
Great.
to be honest, which is wonderful and what you'd hope for. But I suppose that's not that surprising, because I'm writing or telling my story to kind of a nation of people that kind of 1 in 10 of them get it. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the feedback has been, thank goodness someone's speaking about this.
Yeah.
Thank goodness I'm going to share this with my daughter, with my daughter-in-law, my sister, my cousin.
This explains something.
Exactly. And people saying, because of this, I have booked a doctor's appointment. Because of this, I'm going to push for a different treatment plan because this sounds like something that might help me. And that kind of response is overwhelming. And actually, the response from quite a lot of guys as well has been really, really amazing, because I think obviously I push this conversation on my poor boyfriend constantly.
I was going to say, he must be a great support to you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're either going to run a mile or you're going to stick it out, I think, basically, is the way to look at it. And he's done so well, bless him. I mean, no boyfriend should have to see their girlfriend go through 2 internal scans and sit by them their side. Like, it's a lot.
I think he's in it for the long haul.
But he is... maybe don't put that in. No, he's such a superstar. So...
Yes.
But it's really wonderful to see men and people who, like, maybe their wife's going through it with their partner, or people who wouldn't normally have to, wouldn't feel like they had to engage in these kind of discussions, which is the problem as well. You know, being so responsive and being so, like, amazing, thank you for talking, thank you for a little bit of education on this, which has been extremely positive.
So do you think if you had been introduced to the condition when you were younger, you might have gone, okay, that fits everything that I'm experiencing? So what I'm trying to get at is, I guess, do you think that you can see yourself taking it into schools, chatting to younger girls to look out for symptoms?
Well, I'd love to. And I know that Endometriosis UK and the other charity, Women with Endometriosis, have that at the fore of their agenda, basically getting people talking from a very, very young age. I think that where another place that would benefit from it is the student union at university and things like that, because realistically, where you might be a bit more hesitant to tackle subjects that make you feel a little bit, you know, shy, whatever, at school, because let's be real, school is hard enough, you know, getting through all that stuff. It's hard to be open and honest about who you are, your identity, all these things at school is difficult. I think where people go and they kind of are prepared to tackle issues head on is in, you know, when they're starting out in the workplace, or when they're at uni or college, and they're having more candid, honest conversations with their peers about who they are and about the things that they're going through. And actually, certainly my experience at uni, no taboo was too big for us to talk about, but yet we never spoke about this.
Yeah, that's true. True. On that, I would like to dispel a few myths, because me myself had a wee look on the internet and I saw and I thought, okay, I don't know if these are correct, so I'm going to ask the expert.
Okay, well,
so first of all, endometriosis means infertility.
No. This is one that, no. Okay, no, not at all. It could mean exploring different avenues. It could mean a little bit of a trickier road towards natural conception, for sure. But it doesn't mean infertility at all. I mean, before I went into my surgery, my main thing that I said to my surgeon was, for me, my choice, particularly, you know, is very specific. I said, I'm 22. I shouldn't have to think about my fertility at this point in time. I'm not in that position yet. But if you can, whatever you can do to make sure that the machinery is in place and remains in place for me to one day have that option, please keep it there. Like, you know, I had to sign this form saying that they could take out an ovary, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, because everything inside me kind of went, no, please don't. But I had to, because you know, you've still got another one if they take that, you know, all that stuff. You think you try and rationalise and all this stuff.
But you shouldn't have to think about that at your age.
No, and then you don't realise how much you want it until someone sort of dangles the opportunity in front of you and goes, right, you might not have all the gear, so it might not be able to happen. And bottom line, 60 to 70% of people with endo can conceive naturally, and that's in a world full of negative statistics, that's one to cling on to if it's something that you want. And for me, it's certainly what I've done. There's so many inspiring stories of women that have come through all this stuff and through IVF and through whatever means, and actually sometimes just through, you know, good luck, they've managed just fine to conceive naturally. So I would have to say I'm calling nonsense on that one.
Perfect.
Not true.
Next one. You can only get it in your pelvis.
Well, this is a load of gibberish because I don't know where this has come from at all. Because the whole condition is that cells that are meant to be in your uterus are formed elsewhere. So surely they're not just going to hang out down there. They're going to go, they're going to cause chaos. They're going to go wherever they want to go. I don't know if you saw this thing. It was like BBC News put it out, BBC News Worldwide. And this incredible woman, she's a journalist as well, actually. Very high up. I'm not comparing myself to her. But she kind of was struck with endometriosis and she was trying to sort of deal with her diagnosis. And the reason that she took so long to work it out was because she had a really bad cough. And they were all kind of like, oh, wait, that's weird. And someone asked her, is it cyclical? Like, does your cough come about when you have your menstrual cycle? And obviously, if someone said that to you, you just think like,
how are the two connected?
What kind of nonsense are you coming out with now telling me that I'm coughing because I'm on my period? Like, that's ridiculous. But her endo had attached to her lungs.
Wow.
So her cough was symptomatic of her endometriosis. I've heard endometriosis cells attaching themselves like to your diaphragm, your lungs, obviously I've got it on my bowels, which is just the most awkward one, I think. No, not that they're all awful. But you're talking periods and poop then, so then you've got a real situation. No one's talking about that.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Periods and poop.
Hashtag.
Yeah. Exactly, that is a hashtag.
It's not glamorous, but certainly, they're rogue cells. They're going to go wherever they want to go. They're not confined to anything, certainly not the pelvis.
And no one is immune to it because you're very glamorous yourself. So periods and poos aren't glamorous, you are. Another one here is you don't need a diagnosis.
Right, this is a difficult one because I would say, no, you don't need a diagnosis in the sense that it shouldn't define you. It shouldn't be something that you need a label for. You should be able to express the same concerns and contribute to the dialogue if you have the symptoms, full stop. But on a personal level, you do need that label. I think because people struggle so much to acknowledge that there's something wrong in the first place. If you have that label from a doctor, or if they tell you this is what you've got, you're vindicated in a sense, because all those fears and those sort of, symptoms you've been grappling with for years make sense, and you feel like you can contribute to the community, you can seek advice. So many girls message me saying, I don't feel like I can join this page, I don't feel like I can do this because I don't have endo, but I have all of these symptoms, and I have this gynae issue, and I have PCOS, and I have, all the same things, and they should never feel ostracised from a group that has been so widely ostracised anyway. So, no, you don't need it, because you shouldn't have to demand a label from anyone to feel that you're worthy of contributing to the dialogue. But yes, you do need it, because I understand what it feels like to feel that maybe I shouldn't be involved because I don't know if I've got it.
Yes, so and yet you tick all the boxes for it type of thing. Yeah, absolutely. And one final thing I wanted to ask you was, you've been doing a bit of exploring of CBD oil. So quite a controversial thing at the moment, but highly topical. So I'll just let you...
Yeah, of course. I mean, well, CBD in general is obviously all up in the news right now because of this wee boy Billy who came into the UK and had a massive sort of fit because he's epileptic and got the Home Office to sort of turn on their heels and go, hang on, we made a mistake, you should have access to your medication. Of course. So yeah, it's really, and then obviously with Canada legalizing marijuana as well, marijuana as well, and obviously in the US, 11 states access to medical marijuana cards, etc. But I'm not after like a high with this stuff. What I'm looking into and what I want to know more about is the pain management side of things with the oils, which are legal in certain strengths in the UK. I mean, certainly I could walk into Holland & Barrett and buy a little tincture of CBD oil. I'm not sure how much that strength would do for me, but it is there, and it's something that I'm really willing to explore and want to kind of engage with more, because if they can help cancer patients get through treatment, then for someone with a chronic illness or even anxiety is known to do wonders for. We should be exploring that. We should be looking at the options out there and trying to see if the government will wriggle a little bit and give us the sort of pain relief we need.
Absolutely. And Katie, what are your plans for the future? Big question.
My plans for the future right now are just trying to take every day as it comes and getting out of bed and riding out the good waves when they're there and kind of speaking out for this community that I think like I say, has been silenced for too long, doing my bit to open up that dialogue more and more. Monica Lennon got in touch and has asked me to come and speak at the CPG on women's health, and I'm going to go and talk there about endometriosis, about my story, and try and contribute in as many ways I can, bring it to the fore, and make sure that people don't feel embarrassed or ashamed about talking about their own bodies.
Before we go on to the next one, is there anything from starting up your own community that you have learned helps your symptoms at all? Is there anything that's come to light that you thought, I did not know about that?
There's all sorts of like random kind of herbal things and diet plans and things like that, which are extremely helpful, and even just like nice teas and things that help and calm, and that I would have potentially been the type of person to roll my eyes at before and go, yeah, what's that going to actually do? Like, is that really going to help? Is this anti-inflammatory wonder plant going to really help me? You know, I'm kind of more the type of person that would be like, give me the painkillers, give me this, give me that, you know, give me
that's based on
a medical
almost, you know,
it's like you feel like if you've got a prescription for it, it's a guaranteed solution, which is actually like a load of rubbish, because you know, some of the drugs I'm taking have so many symptoms, so many, you know, side effects that they, you could argue your pros and cons are kind of like you know, they're very similar, and you just don't really know if you're taking the right thing and this and that. But these herbal remedies and different solutions, and kind of, even I was saying to you before, like for this, because you get this big belly with it, and different means of sort of calming that down have all been really helpful for me to learn.
Wonderful. And that takes us nicely into the next one, which is symptoms are manageable. Are they?
Yeah, from the day to day they can be. Like, see, one day you could go out and conquer the world and feel capable of absolutely anything. And I think maybe because your dark days make you feel that when you have a good day, they're so much better. And you're so overwhelmed by how much better you feel that you feel like, I can just go for miles, I can do this, I can do that.
Totally.
Yeah, exactly the same.
Totally.
But maybe you can't, and that's not a bad thing either. I think that it's important to acknowledge your limitations and carry them with you, but don't carry them like a burden. I think that some days are going to be darker, some days are going to be good, and some, there will be a wonder tea that gets you through that morning, and it'll be amazing, and you'll feel really, really like you've accomplished so much. But don't ground yourself into the ground with it, and don't take it for granted that you're feeling
don't
good.
underestimate, I suppose, your kind of journey and where you're at, and you know.
Yeah.
So we have another one here. Wearing tampons increases your chance of developing endo.
I'd literally never heard this before you said it. I think it's like the most bonkers thing I've ever heard.
And it's weird because this is just coming from me, you know, Googling, thinking, what if I've just been told you have endometriosis? I Google it. And this is like up there on the first page of things that seem to come up, like when you're...
So tampons, like, you know... What? No, so you can get like toxic shock syndrome or something from tampons. Like, that makes sense to me. That makes sense. Endometriosis is like in your cells from your uterus. Like, I don't even see the logic in how that. I understand that tampons, maybe too much information, but nothing is, I suppose. Tampons could be painful.
Yeah. When
you have endometriosis, like certainly during my recovery, I've been forgoing all that stuff because it's just been like that. Back to the good old days of that, like a really thick menstrual pad kind of situation, as in like, you know, the really, really like not glamorous, not attractive kind of
chunky
guys.
fellas.
But you know what? They're fine.
Yeah,
I quite like them, and you know, and
they still exist for a reason.
Exactly. And my point being, like, if it's sore to put a tampon in, why would you do it? Like, bottom line, if it's sore to do anything like that, you don't get, like, I've always said, you don't get a prize for suffering, but there's no point in doing it. There's other options out there, explore them.
And does that mean that sex can be painful with endo?
Yeah, sex can be pretty painful. I didn't acknowledge that I had this symptom until I almost didn't have it. So this is really weird. I always heard this rumour, sex can be real painful with endo. It feels like smashed glass inside and all this stuff, which is really overwhelming actually as a visual anyway, and I never had it that bad ever, which is quite good considering how bad my endo is, so I was quite pleased, and I always considered myself very lucky because I never had any pain during sex, and I was like, this is amazing. Of all the ones not to get, oh hey, I got that one, fantastic. And then since having my operation, although they've not got rid of the endo completely, they did flush quite a lot out that first op. And too much information. It feels so different. It does, like, honestly. So I don't think I acknowledged, because obviously when you're having sex, you've never not had.
That's your experience of sex.
Like,
yeah,
that's
I hear
what
you.
you
I
think
hear
it
you.
feels like.
Yeah.
And it wasn't agonising or terrible or anything like that. It was fine. I didn't mind. But now I'm feeling a little bit closer to what it must feel like when you don't have endo.
Yes.
And what it must feel like is just so different. So it's really interesting.
Good.
So I don't know whether it's better or worse or what it is, but I do know that what was before must have been because of the endometriosis.
Okay, interesting.
Interesting.
Here's another couple here. Pregnancy cures endo.
Right, so people say this all the time, but what I think it is, I think it's a misconception because while you're pregnant, you're not ovulating, so probably while you're pregnant, you wouldn't have as intense symptoms.
So
do you know what I mean?
Pause,
Yeah, kind of the same way that the menopause kind of thing is for me. And also doctors are quick to say to you, if you have the means right now, while we're going through all this, why don't you just try and get pregnant as soon as possible? Because they are paranoid about fertility. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Because there's that like, it's going to be harder for you, so just like start the ball rolling now if you can. Like, even my doctor said that, like, you're not considering having a baby soon, are you? And I was like, I'm 22, sir. I'm not doing that. Yeah, exactly. And I was like, kind of, no, absolutely not.
It's amazing that there's that chat though.
Yeah,
like,
hilarious. And I was like, and where would I keep this child? In a drawer? Like, I don't have space for it. Like, stop. So, no. But I think that's where it comes from.
Yeah.
Paranoia and for 9 months you'll feel better. But unless you're going to start some sort of cheaper by the dozen colony and just have babies all the time, I don't see how it's a solution at all. Like, I really don't.
Amazing. Hysterectomy cures endo.
Yeah, that's also rubbish.
Okay.
I do believe that for some sufferers, a hysterectomy will ease your symptoms or whatever. I know Lena Dunham quite famously had a hysterectomy at 31 or 32, I think it was, for her endo, and doctors said to her after the procedure was done, like, we were hesitant because you're so young, but actually for you this was, undoubtedly the best thing to have done. So again, case dependent, but it's not going to be a cure. Like, it might ease your symptoms, there's less for it to attach to in a sense, or that kind of thing, but it's certainly, there is no cure, and to say that a hysterectomy is a cure is in my opinion gravely, damaging. Because if I was to waltz into a doctor and think that my only option was to have a hysterectomy, well, any future children that I may be lucky enough to bear would not exist. That in that way, like, obviously there are other options and I'm more than open to exploring them should I need to, but I want the chance to conceive naturally. And for me personally, I think to see a young person come into a doctor and say to them, you might have to have a hysterectomy in the next few years, is actually an incredibly damaging thing to do.
Absolutely.
Unless they are so certain, because so many people are so certain it's not on their agenda, in which case a different conversation needs to be had. For someone who comes in with a willingness to try and conceive and expresses that desire to start a family, for a doctor to suggest a hysterectomy, I think is just absolutely ridiculous.
Very damaging, very damaging. And one word, menopause?
Oh yeah, hilarious. So I am on temporary menopause, kind of. So I take these injections. The doctor, I was really against them because of the side effects. Like, they're quite scary side effects.
Is it HRT?
Well, no. HRT is what you take to balance. Right.
Okay.
I'll start. I'll do the whole thing.
Okay.
So they are injections given every 3 months that kind of press pause on ovulation. Full stop. They sort of stop. They shut your ovaries down for a little while. And the reason that I'm on this is because this tube was so big, just to give my body a chance to calm down and not be sort of attacked by endometriosis all the time. And it has eased off my cramping symptoms, although there's kind of spotting and flare-ups, just kind of happen. But it's doing something. It's doing the business in terms of it's not knocking me for 6, every day, the endo. But it's controversial, very controversial. Because there are lasting side effects, but I'm only intend to be on this drug for a year max, so I'm hopeful that it won't, wreak too much havoc. But it sort of inspires temporary medically induced menopause-like symptoms. So I will have a few hot flushes a day, which is pretty horrendous. So that sort of night sweats and increased hairiness. Which is also fun.
Interesting.
Yeah, which I've not had too much of, thank goodness, and I'm really fair, so I've not had any big massive hair. But even if I did, I'm sure I would speak about it because that's the whole point.
Well, thank you so much, Katie, for joining us. I hope and think that we've covered pretty much a lot of stuff about endometriosis. We've done a good job. We're the Empowered Women Project, and nothing's out of bounds.